There were over 1,000 species in the Galactic Concord, and every one of them agreed on two things. Bureaucracy was sacred, and humans were a mistake. The Council Hall of Overic Prime, an opalescent cathedral of glass and anti-gravity architecture, shimmered under the light of a binary sun. The air buzzed with high-frequency chatter, sent pulses, and sonic exchanges that needed constant translator adjustments. Alien delegates floated, slithered, clanked, or strode into the chamber, arranging themselves in status priority tiers. High seats for the ancient empires. Mid-tiers for the prosperous or dangerously erratic. Low tiers for probationary species, newly inducted. Then there was Earth. No tier. Just an empty floating platform near the outermost circle, symbolically close enough to hear, but far enough not to matter. Until now. A shimmer of light signaled a portal activation. The delegates turned, curious. From the blue-rimmed gate stepped a human woman, maybe late 30s, lean and upright. She wore a midnight black Earth Forces uniform, unadorned but freshly pressed. A steaming coffee thermos clinked against her hip, and an offensively pink keychain swung from her belt. Some sort of Earth feline cartoon in a dress. Captain Elise Riker looked up, smiled warmly at the assembled galaxy, and gave a small wave. "Hi," she said cheerfully. "I brought snacks." "Sort of." No one responded. A globular Zrul delegate bubbled an insult in pheromone code. The Varnock ambassador, whose four faces could frown simultaneously, issued a wheezing sigh. And from the high dais, a low, thunderous voice rang out, translated across the chamber into crisp, disdainful common. "This is the representative Earth sends to our council?" The Trask general stood 12 feet tall, armored in iridescent plates forged from neutron star alloys. His tusks gleamed, his three eyes glowed with condescension. He leaned forward as if expecting a better offer. "She smells like fermented sugar and burnt beans." Elise took a slow sip from her thermos and nodded. "That's the coffee. It's an acquired taste." A ripple of huffs, squeals, and chirps, laughter, or the closest analog from this interstellar circus. The Trask general growled. "We expected a war leader. A diplomat, perhaps." "Not." He gestured at her lazily, as if words failed to capture the full extent of his contempt. "A vendor of Earth trinkets." Elise tilted her head slightly, studying him as though deciding where she might put a hypothetical coat hook. "Would it help if I glared and flexed a bit? Maybe give a speech about honor?" The general grunted. "Do you know who I am, human?" "Of course," Elise replied politely. "General Korgoth of the Trask Dominion. You personally executed 3 planetary revolts, crushed the Funri uprising, and once bit the head off a Tavarn prime minister during peace negotiations." She smiled. That last part was apparently considered quite charming in Trask culture. Korgoth blinked. "And yet you still come here with no weapon, no bodyguards, no allies?" "Oh," Elise said, her voice sweet as syrup. "I am the weapon." Silence rolled through the chamber like a chill wind. Counselor Sriva of the Illith Confederacy, a creature of glass limbs and bioluminescent nerves, interjected delicately, trying to defuse the rising tension. "Perhaps we can begin with formal proceedings. Earth's application for Concord entry remains under review." Elise shrugged. "Take your time. We're patient." "Humans are not known for patience," hissed a Varnock scholar. "Your species ages in decades. Most of our member races live for centuries. Your cultures rise and fall like fungal blooms." "That's true," Elise said thoughtfully. "But fungi are surprisingly hard to kill. Especially the ones that glow." She smiled again. It was a perfectly nice smile, warm and clean and faintly dangerous, like a sunrise behind barbed wire. Another delegate whispered, "She speaks with no fear." "She speaks," the Trask general said with growing irritation, "because she knows no better." Elise tapped a small wrist device. A hologram spun up behind her, rotating images of Earth. Mountains, cities, oceans, laughing people, wild storms, art and music. And then, subtly intercut, war footage. Real war. Trenches. Bombs. Munitions stacked next to teddy bears. Soldiers dancing in desert combat zones. A child throwing a rock at a tank. She gestured to the projection with a casual flick. We're new to the stars, yes. But we're not new to conflict. We learned war before we learned plumbing. We weaponized fire before we learned not to touch it. You speak of chaos like it's a virtue, spat the Varnock. No, Elise said. I speak of chaos like it's a tool. You just don't know how good we are at using it. Korgoth stood suddenly, his frame casting a shadow over half the chamber. His voice dropped to a low, bone-rattling frequency. I will not waste time listening to the puffed feathers of prey animals. Neither will I, Elise replied, her tone still infuriatingly pleasant. So let's get to it. Murmurs surged through the assembly. Korgoth narrowed his gaze. What are you proposing, human? Something simple, Elise said, turning off the projection. A trial. Your Concord prides itself on unity through strength. Test us. Challenge me. If I fall, Earth walks away. If I succeed, she paused, letting the moment stretch, you'll have your answer. The Illith counselor hissed in alarm. You suggest a martial challenge? Alone. Earth's finest, Elise said, placing her thermos neatly on the edge of her platform. One woman. All it takes. Korgotha's lip curled. You'll die. She lifted one shoulder in a lazy shrug. Eventually. A different kind of silence followed. Not the silence of dismissal, but calculation. Across the chamber, quiet conversations began. Subcommittees flickered into private comms. Risk assessments. Cultural analytics. Psychological profiling. Earth had already been labeled unpredictable, possibly unstable. But arrogance was easier to ignore than capability. And yet, the human didn't sweat. Her heart rate was calm. She didn't posture like prey. The Varnock scholar tapped at his interface, whispering to a neighbor. What if this is a trick? It's always a trick with humans, came the reply. Elise turned slightly, as if admiring the ceiling. Oh, and one more thing. Korgoth leaned forward, amused. Yes, little human. After I win, because I will, I want something added to Earth's entry documentation. He raised a brow. And what is that? She gave a closed-mouth smile, the kind that made predators pause. A single clause, recommended not to provoke without proper planetary evacuation protocols in place. Just a courtesy warning. Korgoth laughed, a deep booming sound like tectonic plates grinding together. You amuse me, human. Perhaps your death will be worth watching. Elise gave a polite bow. And perhaps your defeat will be educational. Sriva clinked her limbs gently, a motion of unease. We must vote. The council voted. Not for Earth's acceptance. No, that was still too far. But for the challenge. The trial of worth had ancient precedents. Species had faced it before in teams. Armadas. Mechanized soldiers and augmented gladiators. Never a single representative. But no one said it was against the rules. The vote passed, barely. Elise remained still, her hands behind her back, fingers gently tapping in a silent rhythm. 1 beat per second, calm as a heartbeat. A very human kind of countdown. After the vote, as the chamber began to disperse, Korgoth stomped down to Elise's platform. The floor trembled. His bulk sucked the warmth from the air. You should be afraid. I am, Elise said. That's what makes this fun. He grunted. You're clever for a mammal. Thanks, she said brightly. You're not bad yourself for a walking dinner plate. His hand twitched, as if tempted to crush her like an insect. But he didn't. He just stared. You won't survive this. Elise's voice dropped, soft and almost intimate. You should hope I do. He bared his tusks, uncertain whether she meant it as bravado or prophecy. Elise turned and walked away, not in a hurry. Her footsteps echoed, steady and light, as if the whole affair was just another staff meeting she couldn't wait to escape. Behind her, the council watched in silence, their first impressions fraying under the weight of something unfamiliar. Not just courage. Not madness. Something worse. Confidence. Real confidence. The kind you didn't fake. The kind that came from knowing what you were, and what others weren't prepared for. As the last echo faded, a Varnock aide murmured, "She's not their ambassador, is she?" The scholar replied, almost in awe, "No. She's their warning." A single room on Ovric Prime had been repurposed for the trial of Worth. It was a containment dome, 1 mile in diameter, surrounded by thick walls of composite alloys, and cloaked by layers of null-space dampeners to prevent external interference. The Concorde had used it before for war trials. None had involved only one human. Inside the chamber, the terrain was artificial but varied. Broken rocks, thick forest patches and metallic ruins modeled after fallen worlds. Simulated, but painfully real. The simulation wasn't for comfort. It was for violence. Elise stood alone at the southern gate, adjusting the straps of her harness. Her gear was minimal by galactic standards. Carbon fiber knife, water pouch, a coil of wire, and a thermal scanner that looked like it belonged in a kitchen drawer. No exosuit, no plasma rifle, no orbital uplink. Just her and a quiet confidence that made everyone else nervous. Above her, glassy walls distorted the faces of spectators in the observation ring, aliens from across the Concorde. Some watched with curiosity. Some with grim amusement. The Trask delegation sat stone-faced, confident in the general's hand-picked champions. Korgoth himself stood at the edge, arms crossed. "She wears no armor," one counselor muttered. "She carries no firearm," said another. "She brought duct tape." Elise turned her head slightly, smiled into the walls like she'd heard them. She bent and tied one boot tighter, then pulled a single chocolate bar from her belt pouch and unwrapped it with deliberate slowness. A timer lit above the dome. 10 o'clock, countdown TO start. On the northern side of the dome, the alien combatants took their positions. There were 6 in total. Each from a different species. Each trained for this exact kind of conflict. First was Scarvun, a 6-limbed insectoid from a death world with armor like obsidian blades. Next, Grintar, a sentient rock with embedded pulse cannons. Then came Fyles, a levitating empath who could anticipate thought patterns. 2 more followed, a dual-headed sprinting predator called a Velshnar, and a cloaked assassin of unknown origin. The final one was a mutant-born Trask juggernaut named Rokhal, bred for rage and mass trauma. They towered, shimmered, growled or floated, each sizing up the small human at the far end. The consensus was unanimous. It would be quick. Elise stretched. Checked her knife. Took one last sip of lukewarm coffee. The timer ticked down. 0:01, midnight. The klaxon blared, and the dome lit up. Elise vanished. There was no smoke, no flash. One moment she was standing in plain view, and the next, she simply wasn't. Scarvun chittered in alarm, scanning the treeline with infrared. "She's using local terrain," he clicked. "Primitive camouflage." "She couldn't have crossed half the arena in seconds," hissed Fyles. "Her species lacks speed enhancement." "She didn't cross," growled Rokhal, sniffing the air. "She sank." "Sank?" asked Grintar. Rokhal pointed to the dirt near Elise's last position. "Disturbed soil. Discarded bootprint. Nothing else. She's under us." Grintar fired a sonic pulse into the ground. The chamber shook. Rock split. Leaves fluttered. Nothing. They fanned out, spreading across the terrain, eyes and sensors sweeping, blades drawn and psionics engaged. Minutes passed. No sign of her. Then a shriek from the eastern tree line. The Velshnar dropped mid-run, legs tangled in razor wire so fine it had been invisible to most sensors. Its blood was fluorescent, and it hissed in pain. A note stuck to its back flapped in the wind. 1 down. 5 to go. Also, your tracking algorithm is embarrassingly slow. Hugs and kisses. Fyles's eyes flared. "That's human humor?" "It's psychological warfare," spat Scarvun, twitching. "She thinks this is a game." "She knows this is a game," Rokhal said. They pressed deeper into the arena. A grove of rusted metallic towers loomed in the center. Abandoned husks of some forgotten race. The assassin crept ahead, cloaked. Then a thump, brief and muffled. The assassin's corpse landed in front of Grinter's path. It had no visible wounds. On its chest was a small sticky note in fluorescent orange. "Don't sneak up on a species that invented backstabbing." Scarvun snarled. "She's baiting us." "Then stop taking the bait," growled Rokal, charging forward. "I will crush her." Grintar rumbled after him. Fyles hovered above. Scarvun paused, antennae twitching. "She is removing the support. Picking us off like a predator." "That's what this trial is," said Fyles. "To test capability in asymmetric conflict. We thought we were the apex." "We still are," Rokal roared. "She's just clever meat." From the trees, a flicker of movement. A line of smoke. Then, boom! A handmade bomb went off, more pressure than explosive, sending Grintar sprawling. It didn't kill him, but it cracked a plasma vent on his shoulder. Sparks hissed out. He roared, spinning, confused. Behind him, a whisper. "You should have invested in surge protection." Then Elise stabbed him, right in the coolant seam. The rock beast groaned, slumped and fell. As he did, Elise used his collapsing frame to vault backward, flipping behind cover. Fyles attempted to follow her with a psychic ping, but his thoughts were scrambled mid-sweep. He gasped. There was static in his mind. "She's jamming me." "How?" cried Scarvun. "She's thinking in loops. Nonsense, metaphor, noise. What is having a Monday supposed to mean?" "You're panicking," Scarvun spat. "Over a hairless monkey." Elise's voice echoed over a speaker she had installed earlier, hidden among the foliage. "I'm not hairless," she said sweetly. "I wax." The voice made Fyles recoil. It wasn't just coming from the trees, it was behind him. He spun. Too late. She hit him with a high-frequency flashbang constructed from a modified wrist light and a reflective strip from her own boot. He dropped, twitching. Elise leaned over him and whispered, "Thanks for the workout. You smell like baby wipes." She vanished again. Now there were three. Scarvun, Rokal, and Elise Riker. The insectoid clicked his mandibles in fury. "Enough of this farce." "She's playing with us," Rokal growled. "Let's end this." They converged at the tower base, back to back. Scanning. Waiting. "She cannot face us directly," said Scarvun. "You sure?" Came a voice behind them. Rokal turned with a snarl and swung. His fist connected with nothing but a decoy. A mannequin-like dummy made from sticks, her coat, and a piece of duct tape holding a smiley face drawn in blood. Behind them, Elise dropped from a tree. She landed on Scarvun's back, drove her blade between his carapace plates, and twisted. He screamed and spun, but she was already gone. Rokal bellowed, then swung wide. This time, she didn't dodge. She blocked. A knife met fist. The sound was ugly, metal against flesh and bone, but she held. Slid. Redirected. Rokal stared at her in disbelief. "You're smaller," he growled. "True. You're slower." "Arguable." "Then how?" "I've had worse dates." She grabbed the cord from her coil, looped it around his arm, kicked off a boulder, and pulled him forward into a gravity sinkhole she'd triggered earlier. Rokal staggered but didn't fall. "You fight like prey," he roared. "No," she said softly. "I fight like I've read your file." She reached under his armor, yanked a power node loose, and plunged her knife into the exposed slot. It sparked, backfired, and sent him lurching forward. He slammed into a wall, unconscious. The trial timer beeped. Midnight. Above, the observation ring was dead silent. Then came the hum of the containment field lowering. A single figure walked out of the arena. Elise Riker, bloody but upright, chewing a protein bar as if she'd just finished a cardio session. She waved to the audience. "You guys do birthday parties too?" No one answered. Even General Korgith said nothing. She walked past him, calm, dragging her thermos behind her like a casual trophy. Korgith finally turned. "You disarmed 6 elite warriors," he said. With household tools. Not all of them, Elise replied. I still have my knife. You used no ship, no AI. No support system. I was enough. He stared at her, unsure whether to laugh or scream. You weren't fighting. You were hunting. Only fair, she said, since you started it. He hesitated. That was your strategy all along? No, she paused, then grinned. The real strategy starts now. Now? Oh yes. She leaned closer. You just taught every Concord race how bad they are at their own war games. That'll go well. You could have killed them all. I didn't have to. You'll do it for me, when your allies panic. His eyes narrowed. That was the point. Part of it. You're playing a bigger game. She didn't answer, just smiled and walked away. And as she disappeared into the shuttle corridor, Korgoth whispered to himself, soft, grim, and utterly shaken. One woman. The Velshnar had begged for medical. The assassin was presumed dead. The rest had requested no further public statements. The Concord's trial had been intended to humiliate Earth. Instead, it had humiliated the Concord. And deep in the quiet spaces of their ships, entire species began rethinking their first contact strategies. Earth wasn't weak. They were hiding. And Elise Riker? She had just said hello. Captain Elise Riker stood in the center of a circular room designed for high-stakes diplomacy. The lighting was soft and indirect, a calculated choice meant to evoke peace, or compliance. The air smelled faintly of ionized crystal, a neutral scent chosen so as not to offend any of the 42 nasal archetypes found among the council species. She wasn't impressed. A pane of translucent membrane pulsed open behind her with a wet pop, and 2 Varnock scholars slithered in. Their 4 faces remained unreadable, each one twitching independently as they adjusted to her presence. Unlike the warriors she had faced in the trial, these were thinkers, calculating, clinical, and trained in diplomacy, dissection and disarmament, often in that order. You appear unharmed, said one of the mouths. I moisturize, Elise replied. The taller Varnock lifted a data tablet with an appendage that resembled a braided cable. Captain Riker, we are instructed to conduct a debriefing. For posterity and Concord archival purposes. You may, of course, refuse. Doing so would only add to your mystery. Wouldn't want that, she said, stepping forward. Go ahead. Let's see how many boxes I can break. Your behavior in the trial was highly unorthodox. No mech support, no neurosync AI, no tactical uplinks. Yet somehow, she said, I walked out. The scholars conferred briefly in subsonic clicks, then resumed. We have reviewed Earth's military history, said the other. At first, we assumed exaggeration. Now we are less sure. Flattered, Elise said, examining a holographic sculpture spinning slowly above the center table. It depicted a Concord interpretation of peace, hands of multiple species holding a single flame. She suppressed a smirk. The Earth version would have been a pile of guns under a flag. You are a war species. Not exactly, Elise corrected, now leaning on the table. We're a survival species. War just happens to be one of our better hobbies. We do not understand your desire for Concord inclusion, said the tall Varnock. Earth lacks the technological maturity, the diplomatic tradition, and the cultural refinement typically required for integration. True, Elise agreed. But you forgot to add. And yet, we're still here. The scholars grew silent, exchanging glances across their independent faces. Elise knew what they were processing. How Earth had skipped centuries of development most other species took millennia to master. How they jumped from combustion to quantum tunneling in under 100 years, powered largely by caffeine, stress, and boredom. Your cognitive models are chaotic, one of them said. No genetic caste order, no consensus operating system. You place irrational emphasis on emotional attachment and cultural nostalgia. Elise grinned. That's what keeps it spicy. There is concern, the taller one admitted. Not just about your victory, but your intent. Now they were getting to it. Most species, the Varnock continued. Use the trial to prove cohesion, martial skill, or bravery. You demonstrated something else. You demonstrated calculation, patience, psychological manipulation. You used no weapons of scale. I didn't need scale, Elise said, standing upright. I needed message clarity. And what message is that, Captain Riker? That humanity is polite. Until it's not. They paused, visibly discomfited by her answer. From the back of the room, a new voice joined. It was softer, more sonorous, tinged with an accent that didn't exist, but sounded expensive. A Trell ambassador glided in, robed in luminescent fabric that flowed like liquid light. We have reason to believe, the ambassador said, that your presence here is not to request membership, but to issue a threat. Elise raised an eyebrow. Now who's making assumptions? You have destabilized the internal perception of the Concord, the ambassador continued. Dozens of species are questioning their combat protocols. You humiliated elite champions. Morale damage alone is incalculable. I brought duct tape and a thermos, Elise said. You did the rest. Is this humor? The Trell asked. Irony. It's a side effect of growing up on a planet where your toaster might try to kill you. The Varnock scholars turned toward the ambassador, unsure if jurisdiction was shifting. You are here to conquer us from within? The Trell pressed. I'm here to see who panics first, Elise replied. Then added more softly. But no, I'm not the conqueror. Then who is? She smiled again, but this time it lacked any trace of humor. You invited us in. The Trell seemed to shift colors slightly, not enough for most species to notice. But Elise caught it, nervousness, cloaked in authority. You misunderstand the nature of the Concord, the ambassador said. We exist to unify. No, Elise said. You exist to control. You're just better at marketing than most empires. That landed harder than she expected. The silence that followed was thick and uncomfortable, like wet insulation. One of the Varnock scholars dared to break it. If you are not here for conquest, not here for alliance, and not here to grovel, what then is Earth's true mission? Elise looked up at the ceiling for a moment, as if deciding whether to lie. Then she met all their eyes at once. Exposure. Explain, said the Trell, voice flat. You're all hiding behind ancient systems. Behind obsolete alliances, ceremonial duels, formal declarations. Humanity doesn't work that way. We don't warn the bear before we poke it. We poke it to see what happens. You believe this is a test, the ambassador said. No, Elise replied. This was the tutorial. The lights in the room dimmed. Security filters activated, and a red pulse moved across the walls, restricted information protocols. Someone upstairs was listening now. Captain Riker, the Varnock said carefully. We have recently observed anomalies, trade route disruptions, communications interference, civil systems glitching. Elise didn't respond. Several Concord systems use integrated heuristic uplinks derived from Earth prototypes, the ambassador continued. Your open-source neural mesh was adopted by 16 member states. It was free, Elise said, and also laced with data harvesting tools, the Trell finished. I said it was free, Elise corrected, now circling the room slowly. Not harmless. The ambassador's voice turned sharp. You weaponized your entry gifts. I gave you tools, Elise said. What you did with them is on you. But yes, let's not pretend Earth didn't come bearing teeth. And now? Asked the Varnock. What is your next step? Nothing, she said. We're done here. That's not possible, the Trell said. You can't just destabilize Galactic Trust and leave. But I can, Elise said. Because we didn't come here to be part of your club. We came to confirm that you're still using playbooks written before Earth was even spacefaring. And you are. You came to expose our flaws? We came, she said, to find out whether you were threats or targets. The air went still. Even the automatic ventilation seemed to hesitate. The Trell finally found words again. You've endangered every diplomatic bridge your people might have built. You've made enemies. Elise shrugged. We were never looking for friends. Just leverage. The door behind her slid open, unannounced, and a figure entered. Tall, lean, human. Unmarked uniform. Eyes like glass. Elise didn't turn. You're late. I was never meant to be on time, the figure replied. The scholars backed away instinctively. The Trell twitched. The new figure stepped forward and placed a small device on the table. It pulsed once. The lights flickered, and every surveillance unit in the room went dark. A single second later, they came back online. Except now, the room was locked from the inside. You know who I am? The man asked. The Varnock scholars didn't answer. I'm not in your records. But I'm in your systems. The Trell remained composed. Earth's intelligence apparatus? No, Elise replied. Earth's insurance policy. The man smiled politely, as though hosting a cooking show. All those neural mesh systems? The ones you modified to your liking? We've been watching through them for 8 years. Learned your politics, your weaknesses, your power maps. We never needed to fire a shot. The Trell's tone turned cold. This is an act of war. No, the man said. This is a warning. War would imply we'd be resisting. This is preemption. The Varnock stammered. Your species has violated dozens of Concord regulations. We never signed anything, Elise reminded them. You were being considered for membership. Exactly, she said. Which gave us temporary observation status, limited tech integration, and full diplomatic immunity. The room reeled. The Trell ambassador's voice dropped to a whisper. You baited us. We let you bait yourselves, Elise said. We just smiled while you did it. The lights flickered again. A quiet alarm buzzed from the far wall, a signal most wouldn't recognize. But the Varnock did. It was the kind of alarm used in internal Concord channels to denote systemic breaches. Data loss. Mass scale. It had already begun. We seeded every port system, the man said. Every shipyard, every orbital exchange. Not to control them. Just to remind you that we could. Elise nodded. You're going to spend the next decade cleaning this up. Meanwhile, we'll be watching. And waiting. We'll know if you get any ideas. You expect us to submit? No, she said. We expect you to think very carefully about what Earth might do next. The lights returned to normal. The man stepped back. The device on the table disintegrated with a pop of compressed energy. All external systems reconnected. The lock disengaged. You can arrest us now, Elise offered. The Varnock shook its head. You want that? You want martyr status? Not really, Elise said, heading for the exit. We're fine with myth. The ambassador called after her, voice uncertain now. Who are you? Elise stopped just at the threshold. Earth's polite introduction. Then she left the room. And the chamber, full of some of the most powerful minds in the galaxy, sat in silence, uncertain, unnerved, and for the first time in generations, afraid. Overic Prime looked different from orbit. From ground level it was a polished jewel, a monument to galactic diplomacy. But from above, Elise Riker saw the cracks, literal and metaphorical. Power distribution nodes dimming. Traffic lanes snarled by communication delays. Central AI struggling to sort hundreds of minor disturbances all tied to Earth's quiet viral systems. The Concorde didn't realize it yet, but it had already fractured. Her shuttle broke atmosphere without clearance. It didn't need any. No one dared stop her anymore. Inside the command bay of the Trask Dominion dreadnought Vorix Fong, General Korgith paced slowly before a wall-sized projection. Elise's face was frozen mid-stride, walking from the diplomatic chamber like she'd just finished lunch. Not a threat. Not a conqueror. Just done. He hated that most of all. His crew watched him silently. They'd never seen him uncertain before. Rage, yes. Strategy, sometimes. But never hesitation. She disarmed us without firing a shot, he said at last. She humiliated the Concorde, replied his second-in-command. She made fools of champions. She is one woman. Korgotha's hands curled into fists the size of small boulders. No, he said. She is Earth. He turned toward the helm. Set a course. I want her found. The Fong powered to life. A ship not built for pursuit so much as destruction. It surged forward like a beast from legend, devouring stars with its shadow. The hunt had begun. Elise was already waiting. She stood in an observation chamber of Earth's primary off-world installation, Station Blackbird, hidden inside the dark side of Luna. It didn't appear on Concord charts. It wasn't listed in any Earth transmission. It wasn't even visible unless it wanted to be. Today it wanted to be. One by one, alien ships were pinging its location, responding to leaked coordinates that had circulated through the Concord like whispers of forbidden fruit. Ships from every faction, curious, alarmed, or simply greedy, drifted closer. Elise sipped her coffee. Across from her stood the man from the diplomatic room. No name, no title. Just a presence, cool, measured, the kind of person governments built in labs when wars outlived ethics. They're coming, he said. Good. He tilted his head. You know this can't be walked back. I'm not walking. I'm inviting them in. To a funeral? To a mirror. Below them, Blackbird bloomed with light. Its outer plating slid open in a slow, deliberate reveal, exposing something the Concord had never considered possible. Fleet. Not just ships. Not just drones. But war platforms, silent and dormant, like teeth behind a smile. You kept this hidden, the man said. We kept ourselves polite, Elise replied. A proximity alarm chimed. The Vorax Fong had arrived. Elise stepped forward and opened a comlink. General Korgoth, she said, voice smooth. Welcome to the Edge. He appeared on the screen, eyes burning. You lured us here. No, Elise said. You followed. That's the difference between you and us. I demand surrender, Korgoth snarled. For what you've done. The sabotage. The infiltration. The psychological warfare. Which you invited, she interrupted. Which you permitted by underestimating the species who turned a rock into a civilization by punching their way through evolution. I will burn your outpost to dust. Elise looked unimpressed. Please do. But remember, Earth has more than one outpost. And unlike your fleets, we don't centralize. We metastasize. The man next to her folded his hands behind his back. She's not bluffing. She never bluffs, Korgoth muttered. He cut the feed. A low growl reverberated through the Fong's engine core. Launch bays opened. Targeting protocols locked onto Blackbird. Elise watched calmly. She'd been counting on this. The Fong fired. It was a beautiful arc, elegant, terrible. A concentrated plasma lance meant to bore through planetary defenses in a single breath. It struck Blackbird's shell and vanished. No explosion. No smoke. Just silence. A second later, the projection changed. The Fong's own weapon signature was bouncing back at them, reflected, inverted. It hit one of their own escort frigates. The ship split like fruit under pressure. Korgoth reeled. You. We mirrored your fire signature, Elise said into the re-established feed. Didn't you wonder why we let you target us so easily? You built this for us. For all of you. Elise gestured, and Blackbird systems blinked. From the lunar surface, 6 cloaked cruisers lifted skyward. Unregistered. Ungraceful. Ugly, by Concord standards. But armed to the teeth. Let me ask you something, General, she said. Did it ever occur to you to wonder why Earth never really asked to join? Korgoth said nothing. Elise went on. Because we didn't want entry. We wanted assessment. We wanted to see who'd posture, who'd lie, who'd panic. You baited the galaxy. You handed us the rope. Another vessel exploded in Korgoth's fleet, one of his own, sabotaged by an earlier retrofit using Earth-manufactured parts. A systems failover triggered an internal weapons misfire. Korgoth roared. Enough. I agree, Elise said. Let's finish this. She nodded once. Blackbird fired. Not to destroy. Not yet. A precision strike disabled the Fong's propulsion. Another fried its long-range comms. Elise didn't want him to die. Not until he understood. On the Fong's bridge, Korgoth slumped to one knee, chest heaving. His second-in-command approached hesitantly. She said it only takes one human. Korgoth stared at the cracked display. She wasn't wrong. Elise opened the channel again. I admire your persistence, General. It's very familiar. Earth used to be full of people like you. Loud. Proud. Convinced that firepower equals dominance. He glared up at her. And now? Now we know better. She stepped back from the display. Behind her, the man without a name whispered, "They'll call this an act of war." "No," Elise said. "They'll call it a wake-up call." The Concorde broadcast system activated. Elise patched through. Her voice echoed across 1,000 channels. "This is Captain Elise Riker of Earth. Today was not an invasion. It was a demonstration. You thought we were weak because we laughed. Because we danced. Because we told stories and offered gifts. You mistook kindness for impotence. Empathy for pacifism." She paused, letting the silence stretch. Never mistake politeness for weakness again. All across the galaxy, her message was being heard. Translated. Analyzed. Parsed for threats and strategic implication. She kept going. We are not conquerors. We are not invaders. But if pushed, Earth will not rise with a single army. It will rise with every grudge it has ever archived. And we archive everything. She ended the broadcast. On the Fong, Korgoth bowed his head. Defeated not by fire, but by understanding. The Concorde would never be the same. Blackbird powered down its weapons. The cruisers returned to orbit. Earth had made its point. Elise stood in the observation room as the stars returned to calm. The man turned to her. "You just made humanity the most feared species in the galaxy." She took a sip of cold coffee. "We were already that. They just didn't know yet." He smiled, faintly. "What now?" "We let them stew," Elise said. "Then, in a few years we send them something." "What?" "A fruit basket. And a handbook. For peace. For manners." The man laughed. As Elise turned away, the stars twinkled like 1,000 open eyes. The galaxy, for the first time in ages, had learned something new. That the most dangerous predator isn't the one who growls. It's the one who smiles, steps back and says, "After you."